After a new report that shows Brighton contributed £595 million to the local economy during their record-breaking campaign last season.
Roberto De Zerbi led the team to their highest Premier League finish of 6th, which means the club are playing in Europe this season for the first time in their history, which is expected to generate a further £80 million.
Now we can speak live to the Brighton Chief Executive, Paul Barber. Paul, really appreciate your time this morning. Just tell us a little bit more about this report.
Well, we commissioned an economic impact study about 15 years ago before we built this stadium, and it predicted that we'd contribute around £20 million to the local economy if the stadium was built. Well, here we are 15 years later, and that figure is close to 600 million, with more to come this year from the Europa League campaign. So I think it's fair to say that building the stadium has been a great success, not just for the football club, but also for the city of Brighton and Hove.
Yeah, it's an incredible impact. Could other clubs lower down the football pyramid perhaps learn from the way that Brighton as a club has developed and grown over the last 2 decades?
Well, I think we've worked really hard, not just within the club itself, but with the local authority, with sponsors, with the fan base, to try and create not just a football club that people could be proud of on the pitch, but also a sustainable football club off the pitch. And in that period of time since we first submitted our planning application, we've created almost 2,000 jobs, 1,200 of them directly involved with the club, and another 800 clubs from local companies that service the club and supply the club. So I think it's not just a great result for the club itself, but also for the city and the local economy, local people, job creation, and that's what really sustainable football clubs are all about. We contribute more than just what the entertainment we provide on the field. We actually contribute considerably to local communities, and it's not just Brighton Hove Albion that do that, it's football clubs up and down the country that do that.
But the growth doesn't stop there, because I'm quite interested in this. I'm told you've got plans to build a new stadium for the women's team, which you say will be the first of its kind in the world. So that's quite exciting. Tell us more about that.
Yes, we think that there's an opportunity to build a stadium specifically for female athletes, with a slightly different bias in terms of the people that come to watch the women's team. There's more women, there's more children, there's more families. Football stadiums in this country tend to be designed for male athletes and more often than not for a male audience. So if we can find the land, if we can make it viable, we'd love to create a stadium for our women's team that is specifically designed for female athletes, and that we believe will be the first of its kind in the world, certainly for football. And if we're able to do that, then hopefully we can then fuel the growth of the women's game in this part of the country. It might inspire other clubs to follow suit. We think there's a gap at the moment between the 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 crowds that we're attracting at Crawley Town, which has been a stadium that's served us well for the last 4 or 5 years in the Women's Super League, and between playing here in the main stadium, which is 32,000, we need to build the audience for our women's team sustainably, and something in between where we are at Crawley and where we are here at the Amex we think would work well. Ideally, if we could build it in a modular form so that at some stage in the future, when the crowds are big enough, we can then move the women's team into the main stadium, perhaps adapt some of our facilities in the changing room areas, for example, more facilities for female athletes. On the concourses, again, more choice for female supporters. Then again, we think that would be a good plan, but we've got a lot of work to do first, and we've got to work with a lot of local partners to make it happen.
It's really interesting, that, Paul. Just while we've got you as well this morning, we did want to get your thoughts on where the game is at the moment with VAR. We saw Arsenal release a statement backing Mikel Arteta's criticism of officiating over the weekend. If your manager, Roberto De Zerbi, came to you asking for public backing of such comments, what would your reaction be?
Well, we've had our own issues over the last year or so with VAR. We had a game at Tottenham last year where a number of VAR decisions went against us. It cost us important points at a critical stage of the season. Unfortunately, every club will have an issue like a VAR decision go against them at some point. We're dealing with human beings here, and human beings will make mistakes, whether they're on field or off field. And it's difficult, and we know that the stakes are really high, and everybody in the Premier League, ourselves included, are frustrated from time to time with decisions. But we also have to understand that there is a process that we have to follow. Howard Webb is working very hard to improve processes and systems. He's trying very hard to improve the quality of referees, not just in the Premier League, but right the way through our pyramid. And that may take some time. We have to be patient, but at the same time, we also have to demand the highest standards. And I think somewhere in between there is where most clubs are. They accept that there's going to be mistakes, but they also want the highest possible levels. And I know from speaking to Howard on many occasions over the last year or so that he wants the same. And we've got to try and give him a bit of time and a bit of slack to be able to do that.
Yeah, and let's hope he can get it right. And I'm sure you'll be hoping that you can get it right on Thursday night. A trip away to Ajax. I bet you didn't expect you'd be asked that question when you joined the club 10 years ago.
I certainly hoped it would be the case. Clearly, the club has made fantastic progress, and the credit there is down to the players and the coaches over the last decade that I've been here, and the last 12 years that Tony Bloom has owned the club. Fantastic progress has been made. We're constantly striving to be better. Each season that goes by, we're pushing as hard as we can to improve on the league position of the previous season. Last season was obviously an all-time high for the club, finishing 6th, qualifying for the Europa League. But this is what so many people have worked for over so many years, going right the way back to the start of this interview and talking about when the stadium was conceived and the planning permission was sought and the economic impact was predicted. At that point, we always hoped that we would get to the sort of levels that we're at now. But staying here and sustaining these levels is the next trick. And that's going to be a lot harder because there's a lot of clubs around us, big clubs that have been around the top level of English football and played in Europe many more times than us, that are looking to replace us in the competition next season. But for now, we're looking forward to going to Amsterdam tomorrow, looking forward to Thursday night playing in the Ajax arena, and hopefully getting the result that we need to progress in the competition.
Well, Paul, enjoy that trip to Amsterdam, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. Appreciate it.